Alright, in this tutorial I am going to create this beautiful motion graphic effects using the Blender geometry nodes and a shader node to add the material to the circular tubes. So how we can create this, and if you like this type of motion graphic effects, then you can visit my Patreon, link is in description, where you find a lot of procedural stuff. So how we can create this, now let's jump into the video. Alright, we are in Blender, and here I select this cube and enter into the geometry node workspace. And here I hit this new button to create a new node tree. And here I select this and delete and press Shift A, and I search for the mesh line and connect with this the group output. Now we have this mesh line in our 3D viewport, and I want to rotate this along the x-axis. So for here I search for the transform geometry node, and here I change this angle to the 90 to perfectly rotate this along the x-axis, something like that. And here I search for the another node, which is the instance on point node, and place it here. Move this node here, and in instance here I search for the curve circle and connect this with the instance. Now we have this, and here I rotate this value to make these circles something like that, and we can change these circles into the cubes. So for that we use two different methods to do this. First we convert this curve into mesh and mesh into curve, and use the curve profile to add this curve circle to make these tubes. But we cannot use in this tutorial because I want to use properly place the material onto these curve tubes. So for that we use an attribute to place and rotate the materials onto these tubes. For that here I search for the node which is the curve to tube and connect it here. Now we have these, and here we do some changings. Here I decrease the scale 0.01 meter. Now we have very small circular tube, and the resolution is too much low. So for that here I increase the resolution something like 64, and here in the mesh line we can change this number to increase the circular tubes something like that, and decrease this number to closely pack these tube. And here you can see, and here I put 300 to make these tubes very large, and here I decrease this number 0.03. So you can see these circular tubes and a very little small gap in between them. Now we have this. Now I want to add material. So for that, here in the material workspace, I hit this new button to create a new material. To pick this material in the geometry node, here I search for the set material node, and here I choose this material. Now here I use two different attributes which we can use in the shader editor to place different type of materials onto these instances. So here I search for the store name attribute and place it here, and these are the instances. So here I choose instance, and here I search for the random value node and connect this value with the value of the store name attribute. So this node can randomly pick from 0 to 1 different type of colors or any material you want. You can see later. And here I choose pick any letter which is T. You can choose any, and I also duplicate these two nodes by pressing Shift D, because I use two different type of materials. One material having a two different type of these stored name attribute. You can see in the shader editor. Now we have this kind of structure, and our material is select in the geometry node workspace. Now I enter into the shading editor, and here you can see our material. Here I delete this principal BSDF, and here I search for the emission material and place it here. And here we enter into the material workspace. To see our material, we connect this with the surface, something like that. And here I search for the color ramp, place it here, and connect this with the emission. Now we have this, and here I search for the another node, which is the wave texture, and connect this wave texture with the color ramp. Now we have this type of wave pattern onto these circular tubes. Now here I decrease this detail to 0, and also this scale, something like you can see our wave texture is not properly placed on these circular tubes. So for that, our curve to tube node in geometry node workspace, we use this UV map attribute. I copy this and into the shading workspace. Here I search for the attribute and place it here. And here I place the UV map attribute and connect this vector into the vector of the wave texture. Now you can see our wave texture is properly applied, and now we can rotate this phase offset. So for that, here I search for the another attribute, and now this attribute is instance, because you can see in the geometry node here we place two different type of the attribute to place these materials, and here I use this, enter into the shading, and here I hit the T letter, pick this attribute from the geometry node workspace, and here I search for the math node and shift D to duplicate this, and here I convert this into the multiply, and now this time I use this factor value into the value and connect this with the value of the second math node, and this connect with the phase offset. Now we have this, and here I make some changes in the color ramp, convert this to the base spline, and here I make this color something like this, and here I decrease this scale very small. I think 0.2 is looking nice, and here in wave texture I convert this from sine to sa. Now we have this type of pattern. Now here in this we make some changes to place our wave texture properly. So for that, here I make this value 0 and change this number to disalign the wave texture. And here you can see, here I put 10 to disalign the wave texture onto these instances. Now we have this, and we use the second attribute to add some different color to this structure. So for that, here I select all these node except the emission, and shift D to duplicate and place it something like here. And here I search for the mix shader node and connect this with the layer shader. And here I add another emission material and connect this color with this emission, and connect this with this shader. You cannot see any difference because both of these emission and these wave textures having a same value. Here I increase this emission something like that, and here I use this factor value of this mix shader to place the another store name attribute to pick some instances having a different material. So for that, here I search for the attribute and this attribute, move this color ramp here, and this attribute is also an instancer, and here I use the different letter which is both of these two, and here I put another letter S. So we can pick these attribute in the material panel to place another material on the selective instances which we can select, and here I put this S, and now here I search for the color ramp and place it here, move these two node something like here, and connect this with the vector and this vector with the color ramp. Now we have this, and if I do some changings, here you can see how we convert this color ramp into the constant, from linear to constant. To see this different color, here in the second emission node, here I change the color to see this color. So for that, here I select something like this color and make this color some dark, something like that, and also from B spline to convert this into the constant and invert these something like that. Now we have this. Now here I make some changings. You can see some of our instances having only the wave textures and some of them having the other material. Now here in this wave texture, here I make some changings. Here I increase the scale. You can see now the difference is very clear. And here I make this pattern very small, something like that. Now we have having a single material with two different type of material onto these instances due to the show name attribute, and here we connect two different emission material with the mix shader to create this type of pattern. Now here I want to add some camera to our scene and make some composition to see these emission material onto this surface. Here I enter into this word properties and decrease this to 0, and here I change this into the EV and enter into the rendered view, and here you can see our background is totally black, and here I enter into the compositing and hit this new button. Before, you can see rendered in the compositing editor, we have a one frame rendered in our 3D viewport. So we back into the geometry node, and here I add a camera to our scene. Here I search for the camera and place it here. By pressing 0, we enter into the camera view, and here I move this camera along x-axis, something like that. Again, enter into the camera view, and here I decrease this focal length, something like this, and enter into the rendered view. You can see, and here we render the just one frame, and now we enter into the compositing, and here I search for the fog glow glare node and connect it here. Now we have this. Now back to the layout and enter into the rendered view and into the camera view. Now we have this. You can see the emission material. Here we select this always. Now you can see the emission material. So now I want to add the animation to these materials. So for that, here I enter into the shading workspace, enter into the camera view, and here I change this add value something like that to rotate these textures. So place it to 0, and here I create a new timeline, and here I decrease this frame 120 and back to the frame 0, because we make this animation totally looping, and for looping we always start from the frame 0. And here I check the rotation. I think negative number is rotate into the clockwise. Now put this into the 0 and hover this value and hit I to insert the keyframe, and jump to the last frame, which is the 120. And here I put minus to any even number multiplied with pi to make this animation fully looping, and hover this value and enter, press I to insert the keyframe. Now if I run the simulation, then you can see our wave texture is rotating along this tube perfectly. And if I press F, you can see this in the rendered view. Thanks for watching this tutorial.